So in this project, I want to demonstrate the use of the find method of strings and show you how we can use that to locate the space of a name that's entered, first and last name, and then use the index of that space to separate that name into a first name and a last name as two separate variables and print those out. Sort of the magic of code. It doesn't matter how long the name is, how long the first name is, how long the second name is, as long as there's a space in between. Now, one little caveat here is if they enter 3 words, like Billy Bob Thornton, it's going to assume the last name is Bob Thornton. And we could search for a second location of a space and use then the word comes after that as the last name. But then we might have Dick Van Dyke, where Van Dyke is the last name, and so that middle word would go with the last name. Ideally, we want to look and see if there's a second space, and if there is, then ask them that middle word, is that first name or last name? Using if structure, we could parse that out individually as the middle word being part of the first name or being part of the last name. I'm not going to go to the extent of doing that here. All I'm trying to do is demonstrate how we would use the find command and then use that to parse out a name into a first name and last name very simply. So here's our input. We're going to have to enter our first and last name. That's going to be a string. It's going to go into a variable called full name. And we'll then take full name and use the find method, and we're going to look for the space. Quote, space, quote is inside the parentheses. That's going to return an index number. That index number is going to go into space lock. Now, I probably should have done an if statement here, that if space lock equals a -1, meaning there was no space, tell them to re-enter the name. I didn't do that, and we'll get an error if we try to put something in without a space in it, most likely. But we're going to assume they can follow directions and they give us a first and last name at this point. So again, we can definitely improve on this project. That's not my focus here. So first name is going to equal full name, and I'm going to use that range from character 0 to the value of space lock and the index of space lock. That index is exclusive in my range. So if they put in a name of Joe Smith, the space is going to be the 4th character, which is index 3. So we're going to go from 0 to 3, but that 3 is not going to be included. It's going to be characters 0, 1, and 2. Those first 3 characters from 0, 1, and 2 would be Joe. And then on the last name, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to take the beginning character, space lock plus 1. That would be character number 4. That would give us Smith. And then we're simply going to print out first and last name. Let me run this. I'm going to put in the name George Washington. And I get first name George, last name Washington. Let me run it again. And this time I will use that Joe Smith. And first name is Joe, last name is Smith.